Hi guys, it is your boy Ryan Thomas here from failtech.co.uk, and today I'm going to be talking about what it's like owning an LG G3 in 2016. Okay, so before I get into any of this, I want to talk about the price. You can buy one of these in very good condition on eBay for £120, which is about equivalent to an iPhone 5. And in comparison to an iPhone 5, this has a lot more features, and in my opinion, this is a much better buy for £120. Okay, so I'm going to structure this video in three ways. Firstly, I'm going to set everything into quirks, pros and cons. Secondly, I'm going to be talking about what it's like owning one, not just the facts. And thirdly, I'm going to be talking about if I would buy one. Would I buy one? Okay, so now I'm going to be talking about the pros and what I think's good about the device. First up is the form factor. Now, this is a 5.5 inch screen phone, but it doesn't feel like it because the bezels are so thin and so small. Not only is it aesthetically pleasing, it also makes the device feel a lot smaller than it actually is. And I think that 5.5 inches is a perfect size for a phone. I don't think any phone really needs to be smaller or needs to be bigger. 5.5 is the sweet spot. Next up is the cameras. The cameras are very good. On the front we have a 2 megapixel autofocusing camera, and on the rear we have a 13 megapixel autofocusing camera that is capable of 120 frames per second slow motion as well as 4K video. And here are some of the sample photos, as you can see on the screen. Very high quality photos from a device like this, especially like from me coming from an iPhone 6 as well as a Nexus 4. Okay, thirdly is button placement. Button placement on this phone is fantastic. Now usually you'd have your buttons for power and for sleep wake, which is usually the same button, as well as volume on the left and the right of the phone. But here it's all on the back. The power button is in the middle and the volume up and down are either side of it. Now I think this is amazing. I love this idea because it's the most ergonomic place to have your hands and to put your fingers. The only thing that I don't like about this, I'll get into later, is there's no fingerprint sensor. Okay, so this is quite an important one. It runs a good skin on Android, which means that the skin that lays over the top of Android, which is the OS this phone is running, is actually quite good. The one thing it is missing out on though is a flashlight app. This is something I got way too excited about when I found out that I was going to be able to borrow this phone, and that is the double tap to wake. I love this idea, and if you're on the lock screen you can also double tap to sleep. This is so much easier than having to press the buttons, and obviously with the buttons being on the back they kind of had to implement this in, because if the phone was laying down on a surface you couldn't press the button on the back, so double tap to wake, perfect. Okay, now this is probably the final good thing about this phone. There are more, but this is in the main category, and that is that there is no camera bump, which means the camera does not protrude from the device itself. It is one smooth back. Okay, so with all those pros, there had to be some cons. Let's get into it. First one is battery life. Now this is due to the screen being 1440p, I feel. Even though the battery is 3000 milliamp hours, it is not very long lasting, and that means that you can't get the extreme long battery life which you could out of an iPhone or out of a higher end phone. That's the only issue I can find here, and the battery does drain. It might not even last a full day. Sometimes I've had to charge this twice in one day. Next is the speaker. Now you can kind of forgive LG for this because most phones have speakers like this, and that is the fact that the speaker is actually on the back and it's not very loud and it's not very high quality, but there is a speaker, so be thankful of that. Like I said before, there's also a lack of a fingerprint scanner in the ideal place where you would have it, which is on the button. And unfortunately it doesn't have one, but that's fine. It's just coming from phones with fingerprint scanners, you kind of get used to it. But for £120, honestly, this is a very solid option. Okay, so the quirks. Well, firstly I have the screen. Now it is a 5.5 inch 2560 by 1440 display, which is very good. But it also uses up a lot of battery, and I don't feel that it needs to be this high resolution. This is 538 ppi, which is insanely high pixel density, and I don't think it needs to be that high. I think we can drop that down to about 320 ppi with absolutely no issue. Autofocus, well, in some of the apps that aren't its native camera app, you try and autofocus, and I'm not sure if this is just the device I'm using, but in the autofocusing, you go to click something to autofocus, you tap the screen to autofocus, it focuses, and then when you take the picture it just suddenly unfocuses again. Not sure why it does this, but if you use the native camera app you will not have a problem. There is also quite a big thing about Snapchat. This phone is renowned for having a Snapchat bug, which you have to kind of download something and go into a lot more detail just to get Snapchat working, and if you're a big Snapchat user I wouldn't recommend it unless you know your way around all this stuff and you can install that no problem. Also, this is one of the phones with a removable back, which means that you can install a micro SD card in it, which means the storage is expandable. This is something that I get quite excited about, coming from a Nexus to an iPhone and then back to an LG, back to an Android phone, is the notification LED. It's just so useful, and I found that coming back from an iPhone, you just miss it. It's just when you can't see things on your phone, there's not an LED to tell you that, you know, unless you've got the screen on, you can't see if you've got notification. This is a quirk, but the 3.5mm headphone jack location. Now, it is on the bottom, and I prefer them on the top. I know a lot of people do, and this isn't a pro or a con, but I would prefer it on the top. And finally, let's get into the specs, the techies kind of numbers that will make them all happy. Holding up my notes for this, but we do have a Qualcomm Snapdragon 801 system on a chip, which is 2.5 GHz with a quad-core CPU, 2 GB of RAM and 16 GB of ROM or onboard storage. Now, this actually comes in two models, and you can get one with 3 GB of RAM and 32 GB of onboard storage. This also has a 13 megapixel camera and a 2 megapixel front camera, as I've said. And finally, it has a 3000 mAh battery. Now, some final words is that this is running Android Lollipop, and it does have plans to upgrade to Marshmallow, which would be amazing, but for the time being, we're stuck with Lollipop. Okay, so what do I feel like owning one in 2016? Well, first off, I think the battery life is just plain not good enough. The screen is amazing and playing games is very good. And would I buy one? If I had £120, I was in the market for a phone, you know, my old one just broke, I would buy this phone. It's a big screen, it's a nice big screen, and it's not a huge screen. It's about an average size screen, but it's a nice screen to look at. It's got good specs, it's got that expandable storage. You can also buy third-party batteries for it, so there's not that much of an issue. And finally, the cameras are absolutely amazing. So this gets the all approval from failtech.co.uk. If you have £120 to buy a used phone, I would buy this one. Thanks for watching, guys. It has been your boy Ryan Thomas from failtech.co.uk. Hope you guys have enjoyed the video, and hope you guys are enjoying the new videos that we are posting every single week. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next video.